The bigger children from age 5 through to teenage years often tries to prevent the mother from being abused. They physically intervene sometimes. They even call the police or a neighbor. Sometimes they speaks out when they goes to school or whenever they are in the company of their peers. So domestic violence, it doesn't only affect the victim, but it affects children as well. Domestic violence is a major problem for us here in Manchester. For the year 2019, we had a total of 45 murders. And of these 45 murders, 10 or 23% were as a result of domestic violence. For the year 2020, Manchester has a total of 33 murders reported. 11 or 33% of these murders were as a result of domestic violence. So as you can see, Manchester is really grappling with the issue of domestic violence. So being here tonight and speaking on it, I hope we will be able to educate our viewers and our listeners and help them to be aware of the problem that domestic violence is causing in our country, and specifically speaking to Manchester. How are domestic violence dealt with by the court? Whenever the matter is reported, the person is referred to the court office where there is an issue of a protection order or a restraining order against the perpetrator, and the matter is dealt with in the courts. Where the judge, both parties are brought before the court, the victim and the perpetrator, and strict instructions are given to the perpetrator. And if they are violated in any way, the perpetrator is arrested immediately once that is brought to the attention of the police, and they are taken before the court. Help is available for persons who are affected by domestic violence, but sometimes persons are afraid to speak out, so they are not able to access these benefits that are available. Domestic violence puts the entire community at risk. So persons need to speak out in order to get help when this happens. There are places that treat with domestic violence, places such as the Bureau of Gender Affairs. The number for the Bureau for Gender Affairs are 876 754 8577 or 876 754 8578. We have the crisis center that has a shelter that offers shelter to persons who suffers from domestic violence and need somewhere to stay on a temporary basis. This, this service is offered. In order to get this service, the location is not disclosed to the public, but the numbers are available. 876 929 2997, 926 9398. We also have the restorative justice. For Manchester, the office for the restorative justice is on the third floor of the Mandeville Post Office. The number is 962 3784. How can persons lessen domestic violence? Domestic violence is a crime. It needs to be reported. Help is available. Nobody should have to suffer from domestic violence, but it does happen. And when it does, it needs to be reported so that the persons affected can help. Some of the causes of domestic violence. It's a learned behavior. Children witness violent behavior in the home and believes it is acceptable. Sometimes children get direct messages from parents that whenever you are hurt by someone, you should retaliate. In such cases, children are vigorously encouraged to damage others, punish, or fight their peers when in school and in other areas where they are at play. Socialization. Men, socialization through overwhelming influence by the media and our educational systems also perpetrates domestic violence from what they hear or their peers are doing. In so doing, they become abusive in their relationship. They become dominant, and they believe that they are the ones who are to make all the decisions, whether they are right or wrong. Emotional abuse can take the form of jealousy, stress, and frustration, and is used as excuse for violence. And most times we see this being perpetrated by the men. Another form of domestic violence is the sexual abuse perpetrated by the men who feels and believes that it's their right to have sex in whatever way, shape, or form with the female, whether or not she's in agreement. Domestic abuse, as I've said before, is not a private matter. It is a crime, and it should be reported. Help is available. So let us help to stem this monster that is affecting us. At this time, I'll take any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Inspector. So we have heard it. Domestic violence is a crime. It's not a private matter, something that should be reported. I know that there are some questions at this time, and for a smooth running, we're going to ask that you go ahead and type your questions in the chat. I will read the questions. No names will be called because we're going to maintain the privacy of the individuals who are asking the questions. So you may just post your questions in the chat. If you are on YouTube, Facebook, you post your questions the same way, and I will ask the questions, so we will have a smooth flow. Inspector, while they are putting the questions in the chat, you mentioned the fact that the domestic violence, the abuse is usually among females. Um, from your experience, from your research, the statistics out there, talk to us about men and being the victims of domestic abuse. Is that a far-fetched thing, or does it in fact happen where men are victims of domestic abuse?
Men are indeed victims, but most of the times they are afraid to report it because they don't want to be seen as weak. But men do suffer from domestic violence.
Thank you, Inspector. So men, you are encouraged to report it. Don't become that macho man. Don't allow your ego to step in the way, and before you know it, you are butter bruised left, right, and center. You need to report it. All right, there's a question in the chat. Person wants to know here, Inspector, and I think you may have covered this one already. Can one be arrested for sexual abuse? Can one be
Yes,
arrested for sexual
yes, they can
abuse?
be arrested once it is reported.
And in the same breath, how does one really classify sexual abuse? I mean, I'm in a marital relationship with my wife. How does the court determine, or the police determines, sexual abuse, especially in a marital context?
The wife will, with the wife, once the wife makes a report, the matter is investigated.
Now, tell us, Inspector, I don't know if there is any study being done, actual study being done in Manchester. You did report some statistics about Manchester, and the numbers seem very high. If my memory served me well, you said about 23%. Any reasons, anything that the police have pinpointed that may be a contributor to the incident rate in Manchester?
Repeat that question.
Where I'm asking you about the level, the percentage of domestic violence in Manchester, and whether or not the police may have pinpoint any real contributors to that particular statistic.
Infidelity is one such, where the person feels that the partner is being unfaithful. Sometimes the disputes are over properties. But infidelity is one of the major factors.
Okay, so infidelity, the major one. All right, so there is assistance available to our males or females, you did indicate. Is it the
It is
same kind
available to
of,
both. It is available to both genders.
and is a similar kind of assistance that is available to the genders? All right, Inspector. Thank you very much. What are some of the measures, this question, what are some of the measures that are available to resolve domestic violence in Jamaica?
Education, and persons need to report. If some persons are not aware that there are avenues out there or there are help out there as it relates to domestic violence. Some persons don't think that they are being abused. So some persons are living in denial. So that is one of the things why they don't report. Some persons are afraid to report that they are being abused. And education is a way. So and persons have to be neighborly. If you know of any of your neighbors being abused, you need to report it or encourage them to make reports so they can be helped.
On the matter of reporting, interesting that you'd have brought up that point. So if I am aware of a domestic abuse relationship with a neighbor, what is my responsibility? Or do I have a responsibility in terms of reporting same to the police? And if yes,
Yes, you do. And when you do, you might just be saving a life. Because as you know, domestic violence most times happens in the home. And if it is not brought to the attention of the police most of the time, we won't be aware of what is happening. Unless it reaches the stage where, because some of the times when the reports are made is when the person is badly injured or killed. And that is the time you'll hear that persons are aware and they knew that the person was being abused and nothing was said or done about it.
so listeners, we are encouraged to make the reports, bring it to the attention of the police so that we can do our part in saving a life. Thank you very much for your response, dear Inspector Lloyd. There's a question, and I suspect it is from a male. It says, how sure am I? They want to know if they are guaranteed safety after making their report about as a spousal abuse, especially as a male. They want to ensure safety. How can their safety be guaranteed?
I'm not sure I'm understanding the question. Is it that the person is saying if he's being abused and he reports, how can his safety be assured?
Yes, I suspect that. And if that's not the case, I'm certain a follow-up question will be placed in the chat.
Well, there is the crisis center, as I've already indicated, that has a shelter that is not disclosed. So if the person is fearful of his or her life, they can call the numbers 929-2997 or 926-9398. Also, if it is a situation,
Inspector, repeat that number. I'm going to place it in the chats for our viewers. 929
929-2997, 926-9398. That's the crisis center.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so you go to the chat. I'm placing the numbers for the crisis center, 929-2997 or 926
And
9398. Those are the numbers for the crisis center. Thank you very much, Inspector Lloyd.
and as it relates to the court, if it is a situation where it's one of urgency, the court will treat with the matter urgently. And
Thank you very much, Inspector. Okay, so I got the numbers. Now, a caller wants to know, Inspector, what if the abuser is armed and there is no way to report without the person knowing that it is you? For example, a neighbor, you know of a neighbor with a domestic violence situation and the person is armed, and it's going to be difficult to create an awareness by the police without the person having an idea. How can one?
you're breaking up. I didn't get that question. You're breaking up.
Caller wants to know, what if the abuser is armed and there is no way to report without the person know it's them? How would they treat with a situation like that?
A telephone call, a telephone call is enough. You don't really have to make a physical visit. You can make a telephone call to the nearest police station or to the crisis center, and the matter will be treated.
Thank you, Inspector. Now, caller here wants to know if we think that community policing can assist in the issues, as example, domestic violence. What role does community policing play in this regard?
Community policing plays a very important role because we partner with the different stakeholders, the church, the social groups, and we have our public meetings where we educate the community, as I'm doing here now, as to how to treat with domestic violence. Because most of the times persons said they are not aware and they did not know that it is a crime. So education is very important.
All right, thank you very much, Inspector. This caller wants to know, if you have a husband and you tell him no sex and he has sex with you the same way, is that referred to or classified as sexual abuse?
Yes. Sexual abuse occurs when the partner forces sex on you physically or uses emotional leverage or threat to force you to give in.
All right. So you notice how blunt Inspector was with her response to that particular question. Yes, it is in fact sexual abuse and ought to be treated with in the appropriate way. Question to you again, Inspector. Oftentimes persons stay domestically abused due to their socio-economic background. What are the rehabilitation strategies to help those individuals?
So the economic control varies because not only persons who are of a low economic background that abuse, it happens right across the board. So education is very important, and oftentimes persons are referred where they can get help in treating with the situation.
Thank you very much, Inspector. I have a very interesting one here for you, Inspector. Caller wants to know if my husband is suffering from schizophrenia, and is diagnosed as suffering from such. And if that husband beats me up, can he legally use that as insanity, in terms of a defense in order not to go to prison?
He needs to get treated for that condition. So if that person knows that that person is suffering from that particular illness, he needs to get treatment so that the person can be rehabilitated and do not have to use that as an excuse to abuse him or her.
Another one here for you, Inspector. If I am raped by my husband, but there are no bruises, how can I prove it? And what are the policies for marital rape?
Well, that person would have to make a report to this Center for Sexual Offenses, where those officers are trained to deal with it, and that person would be medically examined. And as I said, the matter would be investigated, and that would be a matter for the court.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Inspector. Now, just a little comment here from one of the callers in the chat, that people need to know that finance is also abuse. They need to know that finance is abuse, and they need to educate them to get help. I guess it was in response to one of your questions about the socio-economic situation, some persons withholding the finances needed by the
Yes,
spouse.
that too is a form of abuse. Withholding of financing for sexual favors.
Well, Inspector, there's a very, very interesting one here for us. This caller wants to know that if I am not the victim and I kill the abuser of someone else in self-defense, can I still go to prison?
Be a matter for the court to determine. The matter would be investigated and be placed before the court, so that would be a matter for the court.
There is no clear cut that you will end up going to prison. The court will have to decide. Thank you, Inspector. Follow-up question here. In most cases, the police would laugh at you, and this is a male writing this particular question, Inspector. In most cases, police would laugh at you as a male if you were to report about spousal abuse. In a case like that, what do you do? Especially when they don't take you, and I take it, they say, take you serious.
Police are professional people and are taught to treat with all matters that are brought to their attention. And if for any reason you report the matter to one particular individual, there's always a supervisor at any given station at any given time, because as you know, the police works on a 24-hour basis. So the matter will be brought to the attention of the sub-officer, who will treat if the person feels that his or her matter is not being treated with in a professional manner.
Thank you, thank you. So please note that as males, you cannot be afraid to report issues of domestic violence where you are concerned. The matter has to be treated with seriously, and if you feel that the matter is not being handled professionally, you can speak to the supervisor in charge of the station. Thank you very much for your response, Inspector Lloyd. Now, what if the abuser is a police officer? How how is that dealt with? The police investigating the police, so to speak. How is such a matter dealt with where the police is being a police officer, male or female, is being reported as the abuser?
The is treated with in a similar manner where the reports are taken and the matter is investigated. The police is not above the law, so the matter will have to be dealt with in a similar manner as with other persons.
Thank you, Inspector. We have a follow-up question here. Earlier, you spoke about the issue of sexual abuse with the confine of marriage, within the confines of marriage. How can a husband or a wife be charged for sexually abusing his wife slash husband when the Bible states that their bodies are not their own? And this person made a scriptural reference found in 1 Corinthians 7 and verse 14.
Sexual abuse can take the form when persons forces the other to have sex against his or her will, using threats or otherwise.
So it has to be
Persons,
consensual.
right. Sex must be consensual. And for a safe and healthy relationship, sexual respect should be a part of the relationship, as with all other things.
Like that, sexual respect must be a part of the relationship. Thank you for that, Inspector. Now, this caller wants to know what act, what law speaks to intimate partner abuse, and how can those laws or those acts be accessed?
The Domestic Violence Act speaks to it.
Okay, so for that caller who asked, the Domestic Violence Act speaks to that in detail. Okay, now there's another one here, Inspector. Conflict resolution as a medicine in helping to avert domestic violence. Comment here, and I suspect I'm a justice of the peace, and one of the things they emphasize is the whole issue of conflict resolution. We go through training upon training sections in order to help to avert some of these situations. From the community safety branch where you serve, do you see these, being promoted, being pushed, being encouraged in the various communities, as
We
we seek to
do.
reduce the areas of domestic violence?
Yes, we do. Conflict resolution and interventions are what we treat with on a daily basis, and we do refer persons to counseling to further help them to resolve some of these issues. As I have indicated for Manchester, the restorative justice office is at the third floor of the land level post office, and most of the time they treat matters involving conflicts.
Okay, Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other comments you want to make while I scroll through? Some of the questions are doubling up, so I have to sift through them before I read them. I will take your any other additional comments you wish to make at this time while I scroll through them.
Well, for persons to have safe and healthy relationships, partnerships have joint decisions and shared responsibilities that are made together. And once there's partnership and understanding, some of these issues will be easily resolved. Economic equality means that freedom to decide what issues of work, school, or money is spent. Honest emotions can flourish when both parties feel to admit fears and insecurities. So persons need to be honest with each other in their relationships and have honest and respectful discussions in order to avert most of these issues that most of the times occurs. Most of the time, persons feel disrespected, persons feel put down by the way the other probably speak or treats them. So, when persons are honest in their relationship, most of these problems will be resolved. And I would implore persons that in relationship, each party is an adult, and I would encourage persons to respect each other's privacy, because some of the time, some of these problems arise from persons searching each other's phone and all these things. And most of the times, when you hear some of these problems arise from persons invading each other's privacy, which can be avoided most times.
Thank you very much, Inspector. Now, for the last 8 or so months, we have been going through this COVID-19 period. People necessarily have to spend more time within the same space. Have you seen an increase in the number of domestic violence cases since the pandemic has started in Manchester?
Well, Manchester has a primarily a problem with domestic violence, as I have indicated already. So without the COVID, we have already had the problem, and it still continues. COVID or no COVID, Manchester has that problem with domestic violence.
Interesting. Very, very, very interesting. And the research from the police, does it indicate what are the reasons so that probably measures could be put in place to reduce the stem of domestic violence, Inspector?
Yes,
It's one thing to know there is a problem, but we definitely as a society will need to identify a solution. And if we know that this is a perennial problem in Manchester, I would imagine that the relevant research would have been done to determine cause, and then strategies being put in place by the police and other stakeholders to minimize, if not eliminate, this issue of domestic violence.
well, as I've already indicated, education is very important, and the matter needs to be reported so it can be treated with. Because as I have said already, domestic violence is sometimes is not brought to the attention of the police until it becomes a very serious matter. But as I said, neighbors can help. Neighbors can help their neighbors to make the report, get the necessary help. Help is available. So persons have to accept the fact that they are being abused, because some persons are living in denial, and some persons, the abuse become, they become so used to the abuse that they begin to think that it is the norm, but it is not normal. So it needs to be reported so that whatever assistance the victim needs can be made available. But if you are not aware that the person is being abused, there's no way you can help. So partnership is important. The church needs to speak on it. All other social groups need to treat with it, as you're doing now with hosting this program to help to educate persons and to let them be aware that anyone can be a victim of domestic violence. So it needs to be reported. Help is available, but unless it is made known, that person cannot be helped. So we need to speak out.
Thank you very much, Inspector. Now, there is a comment in the chat here that says, as a preventative method, we need to build our girls' self-esteem. We need to teach them to be independent, and our boys needs to learn how to control their emotions, how to act like a true gentleman, and that they don't own anyone. And most importantly, don't give what you can't afford to lose in regards to marital things. Very interesting comment from this caller on the chat. Teaching our girls to be independent and our boys to, to have control of their emotions. And as you have said, Inspector, we need to educate the society. Once we educate people, we feel strongly that the issues within domestic violence can be reduced. But the truth is, when we speak about education, what do we really mean, educating people? Because one could argue a lot of quote unquote intelligent, educated people are involved in issues of domestic violence. We are certain that the issues are not only related to people who are uneducated, ignorant, so to speak. A lot of educated people, church people, respected people within society are part of the act, either victim or the victor within domestic violence. So what do we really mean by education? And can this education, educating population really win this war against domestic violence?
Yes, it can. We have to start there. So it's not just saying if we really think, we have to start somewhere. We have to do the education and encourage persons to come on board and support us. It 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 takes partnership. So all hands have to be on deck. Everybody have to be willing. It is a crisis. And when domestic violence happens, it affects the whole community. So we all have to ensure that we do our part to ensure we stem this monster that is affecting us.
Thank you, Inspector. Question here. What legal physical force can be used in a domestic dispute? What legal physical force can be used in a domestic dispute?
I'm not really sure what that question is asking. If someone is being abused, whatever means necessary, I don't know if that person wants to say that If somebody is being abused, you try to get that person out of the abusive situation, out of the space, into a safe place.
Right? That's right. All right. While we give some consideration to that particular question and interpretation of that question, how do you deal with a husband, for example, who is having extra abusive, very verbal in the abuse, verbally abusing a spouse, and how does the court and the police come into a situation like this? There might not be any physical abuse, but there is certainly that verbal abuse.
Well, the victim needs to make the report and possible try to get that space in a safe way, and allows the court to deal with it. The person have to think how to get out of that space safely without the knowledge of the abuser. So the person have to think, sometimes persons are doing things and they speak openly what they are going to do and how they are going to do it. They have to, strategies will have to be thought out by the victim, and be done at a safe time.
All right. Thank you, dear
And
Inspector.
they can also seek the assistance of the police. And as I have already said, the crisis center offers temporary shelter at an undisclosed location. So the numbers there, the person can call and they can be properly advised as to what strategies they can take to get out.
Thank you, Inspector. We're coming down. There's a comment here in the chat. Paula says, growing up as a child, my father used to abuse my mother. And I always wondered why she have never fought back for her right. Instead, what she would do is to pack us up late at night and take us to her grandmother, which was her mother, to spend the night. And the next morning, we will go back home like nothing never happened. You mentioned the fact that domestic violence can have serious impact on children, and you spoke about the different ranges. Could you just reiterate that for probably a caller or two who may have joined late after you made that particular comment, Inspector?
Ways children are drawn to domestic violence. From the womb to year one, being harmed by it. The mother may suffer a miscarriage or a premature birth. The child may be forcibly pulled from the mother's arm by the abuser and suffered and may be hurt in the process. Mother feeling fear or distress. The child seeing the mother being abused. The bigger children will try to prevent or distract the abuser, become angry and hit one of the parents. Toys may be damaged in the process. The child may prevent or try to defend one of the most likely the person being abused. The trial will try one way or the other to intervene, whether verbally or physically. And sometimes children are affected and they run away from home.
So it's really about protecting the children. Why, a mother in this case would seek to take the child away, to not be caught up in the crossfire, so to speak. All right. Thank you very much, Inspector. We're winding down, ladies and gentlemen. But just to ask you, Inspector, if someone, this person has a very right, if someone tells another person to put their mouth on their private part, which you didn't do, if the person goes around in the community and spread it, is that regarded as abuse?
It can be, yes, it can be, and it can also be treated as a crime, creating public mischief. So the person can also make a report in that matter, and the matter be brought before the court.
Okay, thank you. And another caller here wants to know, if a woman is being abused, can she legally take her children and go where the man can never see the children again?
If she's being abused, she has a right to protect herself and her children from the abuser.
All right, thank you. And I just want to think we are going to wind down in the next minute or two, just to read this comment from this caller here. Wants to know how we can provide our men with the appropriate tools for proper emotional health as a culture. We teach our boys not to cry or to talk about their feelings and emotions. And as a result, they don't learn how to communicate their anger verbally, but instead we find that it is done physically. So there is much work that needs to be done. And you'd have alluded to this earlier through educating both our males and our females, and especially our boys. This idea of being tough, being macho, not to cry, you know, has not really helped us in society. And as a result, we are unable, most times we find that our youngsters, our boys are unable to talk about their challenges, and they deal with it in a non-verbal fashion.
I think we need more positive male role models to show the men the proper way, the right way, how to be proper men.
Thank you, Inspector. I think night has been far spent. You have really enlightened us as to what is really happening in the area of domestic abuse and what we can do. Just to let our viewers know that this recording is online and that you can go on the YouTube channel Filoni Studios, and you can look back at it. There might be something that caught your attention that you need to revisit. Go on Filoni Studios and you can uh, watch this tape or share it with a friend. There might be someone who is a victim and who, for one reason or the other, was unable to come on the program tonight. I see someone typing in the chat here, Inspector. Thank you, Mr. Williams and Inspector Lloyd, for such an informative presentation. May God continue to bless Jamaica, land I love. Sounds like this person is overseas or probably local here. Thanks for the service. One final thing here. If a person goes around spreading lies on an individual, is that called defamation of character? That's how it is referred to, Inspector? Defamation of character?
It can either be defamation of character or creating public mischief.
Yes, I know of that one. Creating public mischief. All right. But thank you so much, Inspector Lloyd, for making yourself available tonight to share with us. This is no doubt the end of it. We will continue to partner as we seek to educate our viewers, our population, our folk about relevant issues as we seek to make Jamaica, the world Manchester, a safer place to live, to work, and to raise our families. I want to thank you and wish you all the best in your current role as a sub-officer in charge of the community and safety branch of the Mandeville Police. Thank you for taking your time to come and share with us this evening. This, ladies and gentlemen, has been another edition of Str8Talk. Remember, Str8Talk deals with issues as it relates to marriage and the family. We talk about issues relating to finance, and we talk about issues relating to health. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Felony Studios, so that you can become aware of the next edition. And you can follow my Facebook page, Philip G. Williams. You will always see information there. And for those of you who are privileged to have my number, you can follow my WhatsApp status. You will always see posting there. I want to use the opportunity also to thank all the callers online for taking time from your busy schedule to come and become aware, become knowledgeable, to share in this call with us tonight. And for those on the YouTube channel and the Facebook page, I thank you also for joining us tonight. And again, on behalf of everyone on YouTube, Facebook, and Zoom, we want to say a big thank you to Inspector Berthlyn Lloyd for a wonderful, informative, and engaging presentation. God continue to bless you, Inspector, and your work at the Mandeville Police Station. And while you're going, COVID cases are rising in Manchester sharply, Inspector. Any words for our viewers?
I would implore our viewers to continue to observe the protocol, the proper hand washing and sanitizing, wearing of masks, and maintaining social distance. And for those who need to stay home, to stay home. If you don't need to be out in the street, and avoid crowded areas.
All right, so there you have it from Inspector herself. Stay at home, wear your mask, be properly sanitized. Keep safe until we meet again. This is Philip Williams, your host from Str8Talk. Good night. See you for the next edition.